Have you seen these kinds of videos on your recommended lately? These types of titles and thumbnails always tend to say more or less the same thing. This video found you for a reason. You were meant to watch this video. I'm in your home for a reason. And then the video itself is the same regurgitated life advice that is too general to really help you navigate your life, but gives you just enough confidence after watching it to daydream about how you would dramatically turn everything around with your hand digging into the bag of chips beside you and lighting up that second doobie before bed. If you're wondering if that's a recount of how I spent my evening the day before, it's safe to say you don't have to wonder anymore. I sound like goddamn Dr. Seuss right now, Jesus Christ. I don't really care for these videos because to me, they represent the sort of perceived mysticism of life. This idea that events are predetermined, that fate is a real concept, that there's some higher power pulling the strings. And while these videos assumedly have good intentions in mind, I feel a sense of cognitive dissonance and virtue singling. Because why would these channels constantly relay the same sort of advice you would find in a fortune cookie day after day, if not for monetary benefit? But this video isn't really speaking on the morality of these videos, but rather trying to introduce you to an entirely different perspective. Because while these videos are really good at tickling you with fuzzy feel-good emotions, I don't find them very productive, and honestly, I think they spread a naive message. And that's not to say that I'm not trying to say that life is brutal. I think you came to that conclusion a long time ago. I'm saying that, but on a different vantage point. Because if there's anything that life has taught me recently, is that reality is absurd. Absurdity is one of those things that's hard to pinpoint, and everybody has their own sliding scale for what absurdity is. But the way I see it, reality is absurd just because of the way we got here. Assuming that you're not a spiritual person, I'm not knocking it, it's just not my cup of tea. You can take a look at the Big Bang, or as I like to call it, the Big Bazinga, because this whole being alive thing is quite a joke if you ask me. You're telling me that at some point there was absolutely nothing anywhere, and then a bunch of shit just started coming together, got really hot and bothered with each other. Hundreds of millions of years later would be the catalyst for why I have to work a 9 to 5 to be able to eat Doritos consistently. God, I'm such a slut for Red 40. I don't consider this the same school of thought as atheism, because atheism is, in my opinion, a reactionary ideology to religious oppression. And that's more of a human societal sort of thing, which is not really what I'm trying to touch on. What I'm trying to touch on is why. We have at least a pretty decent idea of how this all started, but why did it start that way? And people really don't like it when there's just no answer to that. You have to remember, humans are natural-born sleuths. Even as infants, we're trying to find answers to why things are the way they are and how they operate. Because at the end of the day, we're animals, and if we don't find out the answers, the chances of death are a lot more higher. If we don't know how things work, then we won't be able to continue doing the thing that we at least tolerate at this point: living. Once all of our needs and problems are pretty much solved, we then start to think about the bigger picture, and that leads many people to trying to find purpose. People have crises all the time about their place in the universe. Hell, most people unconsciously think that already, just in a smaller scope. Where do they fit in their friend group? Where do they fit in the workplace? Where do they fit in their team? It's these questions that people constantly grapple with themselves because the unknown is the scariest aspect of it. Because our unconscious minds are also thinking about the worst outcome. Are my friends just using me? Am I actually efficient at my workplace and people aren't telling me? Am I the weak link on my team? It's a constant whirlwind of uncertainty, and many of us become severely mentally ill thinking about them. Simply put, it's exhausting to always be constantly wondering what the meaning of all this is. So can you really blame people for looking up to a mythical figure to fill that gap for them? But that's not the way I like to look at things. I don't mind if anybody else does, assuming that it doesn't hurt anybody else, which a good chunk of the time it does, but that's a separate topic. Along with absurdity, I also take into account one of the biggest things that decides our fate: probability. You see, probability is one of those concepts that humans are a really bad judge of. Humans have gone on to solve insane mathematical equations just in their heads, but probability is something that constantly evades us. We've gotten better at it over time, but I really don't see us being able to guess everything 100% of the time. And that's because that's just the nature of probability. What are the chances of a 6-sided die rolling a 6 times in a row? But inversely, people are also a really bad judge of what things are actually likely. For example, it's pretty likely that the most well-adjusted man you know that has a 401k, the car, the wife and kids, and the prettiest, whitest, most unassuming warm smile that he wears all the time, abuses his wife and kids in more ways than one a lot of the time, and not only abuses the people around him, but the substances that he picks up with his nice car. Why is that shocking? Because it's unreported. Domestic violence against women and children is pretty commonplace, and even though it's become less likely over time, that doesn't mean it's completely eliminated. And people who decide to check out of life early is common too, and a lot of people are left scratching their heads, but they seem so happy. What are the chances of that? When you really start to peel back the layers, you start to notice patterns. And while humans may not be great at guessing, we're really good at recognizing trends. As a matter of fact, we've basically built the entire free market around this concept. Companies are always analyzing trends, always on the lookout for the probability of things either going up or down. The stock market basically revolves around this concept, and it's all a matter of leveraging your odds. Just think about it. There's events where people are all sitting around a table of cards and making entire careers solely off of recognizing patterns and trends, leveraging their odds. It's this line of thinking that really scratches a particular itch in my brain, because one thing that I've recognized about myself is that I love probability, both as a tool to navigate life and for entertainment. A genre of video game that I particularly enjoy are horde survivals. The standout games that occupy this space are Vampire Survivors, Halls of Torment, Wedding Witch, which happens to be one of the games of all time. Unfortunately for me, that game doesn't feature any man pecs for me to ogle at, so I'm shit out of luck there. And I'm not going to lie, these are 100% brain rot games. These games are intended to serve a very specific purpose: to watch a cute busty witch unlock a permanent 10% crit chance rate. But what I like about them is that while these games are pretty on-rail in design and is all about incremental upgrades, there's still chance involved. Every time you level up during a run, you're hoping that one of the 3 upgrade choices you're presented with is a really good one, so that the sludge in your brain really starts bubbling. But sometimes, you don't get that option, so you keep going until you inevitably get it. Or you fail the run, you're dead. And I know it sounds silly, but I think there is something to learn from these games, no matter how lowbrow they may seem, because that's all life really is, isn't it? It's simply just leveraging your odds in hopes that you will receive what you want and what you need to continue. But some people don't want to play the game. They're tired of it, they're exhausted from it, they've had a bad break, their luck seems to be running out. The juice just isn't there. But if you stop playing the game, then the opportunity to earn it again never appears. If you close doors in your life, then those doors will simply continue to be closed. While you may not be in control of everything, there are certain aspects of life that you are in control of. Besides, in Vampire Survivors, you still have to perform the inputs, don't you? In order to get those upgrades, you still have to navigate around the enemies, making sure that you're not getting hit too often. And if the forces are overwhelming, well, maybe it's time to start investing in some defense upgrades, isn't it? Probability is what I use to cope with the reality. Nowadays, I don't usually find myself thinking about the why, because the why doesn't really matter anymore. I want to show you this. You don't see it? That's good, because if you saw something in there, I don't want to know what the fuck it is. You can keep that to yourself. This is the Boides Void, stretching over 330 million light years. This stretch of space has nothing in it. Oh, if you remember from science class, 1 light year is almost, 6 trillion miles long. This is an unfathomable amount of empty space. Can you imagine that? There's barely, if any, light in that void. No warmth from other stars, so it's freezing in there. It'd be comparable to the feeling you get when you find yourself locked in the walk-in freezer at McDonald's and Grimace is in the corner with his 1,000-yard stare. Except Grimace wouldn't be there. Maybe he'd be there in your mind because you're experiencing space madness, but there is literally nothing here except complete darkness. Because that's really what space is. It's not the things in it, but rather what those things occupy. And do you truly believe that there's a clear-cut explanation of why this is the case? Not how this is the case, but why. What I hope to achieve is not to get you to walk away from this video and decide that nothing matters, so why try? What I'm trying to tell you is that nothing matters, you're not in control of everything, but you are more in control of your surroundings than you realize. You do not need to hang on to this idea that one day, everything is going to be great, you'll have everything you want, because you'll never have everything you want. Because you won't be the same person today. You won't be the same person tomorrow. You will want different things every single day. Sure, you have long-term goals, but those long-term goals can be changed at any time due to whatever happens to you. Whatever does happen to you, try to learn what is and what isn't in your control. Grocery prices, not in your control. An out of left field health issue that debilitates you, not in your control. Having a good attitude about it and recognizing that these things come and go, in your control. Being born with a mental disability and having to navigate life filled with neurotypical people who are too egotistical or ignorant to really be able to walk in your shoes for a minute, not in your control. Leveraging your odds and living in spite of your bad hand, in your control. Choosing which body part to enlarge on your which waifu, in your control, baby. I love the 21st century, dude. It's so stupid, but I love it. Anyways, hopefully any of this made sense, and if it doesn't, let me know down in the comments. Have a good one.